Welcome to Coyote's Corner. This episode we'll be listening to Michael Lang tell an original tale, The Corn Maiden.
Tommy was raised on his uncle's farm. There was always work that needed to be done, but Tommy didn't mind. He enjoyed working outdoors in the fresh air. When his chores were through, he would often go for long walks in the cornfield and dream of the day when he would be old enough to do all the things that his uncle did: chop wood for the fire, drive the old truck down to market. Tommy's favorite time of year was late August and early September, when the cornstalks would tower over him like green spires, their golden tassels waving in the breeze. One morning, in early September, Tommy was out for one of his walks when he suddenly thought he heard the sound of a girl laughing. Her voice was like music. Tommy stopped in his tracks. He glanced around, but he saw no one. "Must have been my imagination," Tommy said to himself. He started to walk once more, but then he heard her voice again, this time whispering to him. "Who's there?" Tommy whirled around, and he saw a shadow fading into the corn. He darted to the next row, but again Tommy saw no one. Who could be out here in his uncle's field? I'm Tommy. Who are you? Where are you?" "Right behind you." Tommy whirled around. He saw that same shadow dancing away from him down the row. He gave chase, following the sound of laughter all through the morning, till he came to a place in the field where the corn grew so thick it was like a curtain of green and gold. He could hear the girl's laughter coming from beyond the wall of corn. He reached out and parted the towering corn stalks, but he could not believe what he saw. There, in the center of the cornfield, Tommy saw a meadow. He saw wildflowers of every color. There were pumpkins growing from sprawling vines. In the center of the meadow, a checkered blanket had been spread upon the grass, and there sat a young and radiant maiden. Her dress was as green as the cornstalks, her hair as gold as tassels in late August. Her smile was as warm as the midday sun, her eyes as blue as the sky, for she was the Corn Maiden. Tommy drifted towards her as though he were lost in a dream, and settled upon the blanket. Am I dreaming?" The Corn Maiden laughed, another musical laugh. "Would it matter if you were?" Tommy hardly had time to consider the question before the Corn Maiden reached into the basket at her side and produced a picnic of autumn bounties. There was cornbread with honey butter and wild berry jam, apple cider with just a hint of fresh cinnamon, roasted meats sliced thin for sandwiches, and for dessert, pumpkin truffles. They both ate their fill. Then the Corn Maiden sprang to her feet. She took Tommy by the hand, and together they ran through the meadow, laughing and chasing one another, as afternoon faded into evening. When the sun sank low over the meadow, they picked a pumpkin from its vine, and with a knife from the Corn Maiden's basket, they hollowed it out. Then the Corn Maiden gave a sweep of her hand and filled the pumpkin with a swarm of fireflies to light Tommy's way home. "Before you go, promise me you'll never tell anyone of this place." "Oh, I promise," Tommy said. "I promise I won't tell anyone." Then Tommy found himself standing alone in the cornfield, surrounded by the shadows of twilight. He was holding his small pumpkin lantern between his hands. He ran to the end of the row, then up to the farmhouse. His uncle was sitting upon the porch, rocking a slow rhythm in his rocking chair. As Tommy drew near, he thought he caught a glimpse of a smile on his uncle's face. "Where you been, Tommy?" "Oh, I was out in the cornfield. I was playing, and I lost track of time." Tommy's uncle nodded, and he thought he caught another glimpse of that smile. "Well, supper's on the table." "Oh, I'm not very hungry." Tommy's uncle nodded again, and once more Tommy thought he saw the shadow of a smile. "Well, you'd best get ready for bed. Tomorrow won't wait." But Tommy couldn't stop thinking about the Corn Maiden. He couldn't stop thinking about the meadow where they'd played. When morning finally arrived, Tommy hurried through his chores as quickly as he could, then went racing out to the field to find that place once again. But he couldn't find the meadow. He couldn't find the wall of cornstalks. He searched up and down every row, but still he could find no trace of that curtain of green and gold. Then he suddenly heard the Corn Maiden's laughter. "Tommy, Tommy, come play!" With a laugh of his own, Tommy whirled around and began chasing her shadow through the field till he came to that wall of corn, and beyond it he found the meadow once more. Day after day, Tommy would hurry through his chores, then race to the field to play with the Corn Maiden. And he soon came to understand he could never find that meadow when he was searching for it, but when he heard the Corn Maiden's laughter, she would always lead him back to that place. Days turned into weeks. September faded to October. The green and gold of the corn faded to brown, and soon the stalks were falling to the ground. As Tommy looked over the empty field, he felt more alone than he'd ever felt in his whole life. The Corn Maiden was gone. Would he ever see her again? Tommy resigned himself to his chores all through the winter and the early spring, but as snow gave way to rain and the flowers began to blossom, he thought of that meadow. He wondered, had it all been a dream? Had it all been his imagination? The corn was soon planted, and as summer ripened, the stalks grew taller and taller. Then one day, in early September, while Tommy was out for a walk in the field, he heard the Corn Maiden's laughter once more. His heart leapt with joy as he whirled around to chase her shadow here and there, till he came to the wall of corn, beyond it the meadow. And though Tommy had grown a year older, the Corn Maiden remained ever young. Year after year, Tommy would look forward to early September, to seeing the Corn Maiden once more. But as the years went by, Tommy's uncle needed more and more help on the farm. Before he knew it, Tommy was spending every morning chopping firewood. The next year he was stacking hay bales and mending fences. He had less and less time for chasing shadows through the field. Then came one October, when Tommy was looking out over the empty field. He realized, to his horror, he had not spent a single afternoon with the Corn Maiden. He'd been too busy helping his uncle. With a heavy sigh, Tommy went back to his chores. Autumn faded into winter, and another year came to an end. The following summer, Tommy began driving the old truck down to market. He was selling bushels of corn every afternoon. And at the market, he met a beautiful young woman with long, dark hair and a laugh that reminded him of the first robin in spring. They fell in love at first sight, and soon they were married with 2 children of their own, a son and a daughter. The years seemed to pass even more swiftly, and after Tommy's uncle passed away, he took over the farm. Tommy was spending every day from sunrise to sunset working on the farm in sunshine and rain, but every evening he'd return to the farmhouse, to a home filled with laughter and love. Then one evening, in early September, Tommy was sitting upon the porch, rocking a slow rhythm in his uncle's old rocking chair. As the first stars of evening began to appear overhead, his wife came out and sat with him for a while. Then they saw 2 small lights emerging from the cornfield, and as the lights drew nearer, they saw their children running hand in hand, each clutching a small pumpkin filled with fireflies. Tommy tried to hide his smile as the children drew near. "Where you been?" he called. "Oh, Dad, we were out in the cornfield and we were playing." Tommy's wife smiled. "And you lost track of time?" Yeah, we lost track of time." Tommy and his wife exchanged a glance and a smile. "Well," said Tommy, "supper's on the table." "Oh, Dad, we're not really that hungry." Tommy's wife smiled once more. "Well, you best get ready for bed. Tomorrow won't wait." The children were shooed indoors, and Tommy and his wife sat together, rocking a slow rhythm in the rocking chair, while holding each other close and gazing up at the stars. Tomorrow wouldn't wait.
That was Michael Lang telling The Corn Maiden. I'm sitting down with Michael now to get a little background on that story and see where it came from. Thank you, Michael.
Absolutely, Toby.
So, where did this story come from?
I wrote this story about 2 years ago. I was invited to perform at a festival at Emery Farm. It's one of the local farms here in Durham, New Hampshire. And I wrote this story specifically for that event. And since then, it's kind of changed a little bit.
How has it changed?
Well, initially, I wrote the story just for that one day. And because that farm has a corn maze that they do every year, I had written it with an emphasis on corn and the bounties of autumn. But as time has gone by and I've adapted the story a little bit, it's kind of become a story that's more about the cycles of life than just the bounties of autumn.
Okay. Even as we sat down to record this story, it's changed even more.
Absolutely. The first time we sat down to record this, while it was a good recording, I didn't feel like the story was ready for recording. We actually sat down afterwards and had a lengthy conversation about what elements might be missing in the story, what elements could be made stronger, and in the end we decided to throw that recording out, and I spent the next week rewriting the story.
Yeah, we ended up scrapping, what was that, about an hour, 2 hours worth of recording that day.
Absolutely.
And that's not the first time that we've done that.
No, we've done that with other stories too.
I have to ask, for the benefit of the audience and even for just us to talk and learn about it, it's really interesting to take more of an active role in your stories as kind of a producer or as an editor.
Right.
But how does recording change your editing process?
I think it allows me to look at my stories, my oral stories, in the same light that my written stories get looked at. When I tell an oral story, I'm usually so involved with the telling of it that I don't have much time to think about the specific parts that worked or didn't work. With a recording, especially in this setting where you're listening on headphones the whole time while I'm telling it, afterwards I can ask you, why didn't that work? What felt weird about that? And we can go back and listen to the recording and say, there, that line right there, that's the problem. Something needs to be changed about that line. Or that line's really great, but it needs to be supported by more. In the case of this story, we had several sections where it's going in the right direction, but it's not accomplishing the real goal of the story yet.
Yeah, and that was really based off of the emphasizing the life cycles. It's
exactly.
That transition into adulthood with the truck, with finding this beautiful raven-haired girl.
Right.
And then bringing that back at the ending and finding that balance of, well, the parents know.
Exactly. They've always known.
And we know that Tommy knows. I mean, we were there as a listener, but to say that, hey, the wife knows. Everybody has gone through something like this.
Exactly. Every child has that magical thing that is just theirs, but their parents know what's going on because they were a child once too, and that's really what the story's about, is that transition. We don't lose these things, they just change.
Yeah, so it's with you mentioned two different parts of the editing process there. One of having a recording as a resource. I know you and I have done some field recordings for some, like the Seco Storytellers group.
Right, other storytellers.
The radio shows that you've been a part of, True Tales Radio. A lot of the storytellers seem to really use that. Hey, I'm recorded. I can actually hear myself play it back and use that as a tool for growth. So there's that aspect, but then you also brought up while you're listening to it, so you have a second voice.
Yes.
You have a second set of ears, so to speak.
A second opinion.
Yeah. Can you talk about how you use both of those two different parts?
Yeah, the recording allows me to go back and to listen to what the story sounded like in the moment when I'm too occupied telling and sharing and giving that story. Now I can be on the receiving end of it and experience that side of the story as a listener. And that is one tool. But like you say, the other tool, and to me a very valuable tool, is having someone else who can give me another opinion, because I know what I was trying to accomplish with the story. But you, the listener, you might not fully understand what I was trying to do with that line. And when I ask you your opinion, oh, well, I got X, Y, and Z out of that section of the story. Oh, that's not what I was aiming for. Thank you for that. How can I transform that into what I want? What would make your mind go in that direction?
Okay.
And to be able to have that dialogue with someone.
Yeah, and I know I really enjoy our dialogues. I think some of my favorite recording sessions are where we just delete everything.
Yes. And those stories that we have done that with, I think they are some of the best stories that we have recorded here.
Yeah.
Because they have gone through this whole process of revision where it's not just my story anymore. It is a story that I have written that has evolved into something more than what I would have created on my own.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that challenge with me here
Absolutely.
in Studio 417, hosting Coyote's Corners recording sessions.
Thank you for having the show here in your space.
No problem. And thank you to our audience out there for listening to Coyote's Corner. If you want to know more about Michael, check out his website, coyotesinc.com. You can listen to a bunch of previous recordings that we have done here and in previous iterations of the studio. You can listen to recordings that he's done elsewhere, Portsmouth Public Television, True Tales Radio. You can see where he's telling live, maybe even book him for yourself.
And don't forget, as always, to like, favorite, and subscribe so you never miss anything that we're doing over here.
And until next time, this has been the Coyote's Corner.